Okay, guys. Welcome back to another Notre Dame offensive lesson video tutorials. Coach C, yet again. This particular video is going to be very, very quick. We're going to talk a little bit about the field versus the boundary with regard to how we talk formations. And so what the difference is between the field and the boundary on the playing field, right? Or on the gridiron. So we'll do that. And if there's time, I might even discuss the spacing for the receivers and the general rule of thumb on how we line up based on the performance alignment, all right? Or, how we align for success based on what we have to do. If we don't get to it in this one, then definitely the next one we will cover that. And then after that, the next video beyond that will be the formations. And then beyond that, we'll go over the quicks, all the quick game stuff that we have. We'll also discuss the one after that. We'll talk about the drop back game that we have in place. So a lot of videos that we're going to be adding, and hopefully these videos will be helpful to help you not only not have to think, but once you know it all, it'll help you be able to play faster and execute at a higher level. So with that being said, we're going to go into the whiteboard here. So we'll go new whiteboard. And there it goes. So I'm just basically going to draw up a couple things. And again, I'm not going to keep you here long, but I think, black looks, this actually looks good when you look back at the video. So I'm going to use black because I feel like it stands out a lot better than some of these other colors. Okay, so going into it. So basically you have, let's say the ball is here, spotted. Okay, ball's here. Okay, and it's on this hash, on the right hash of the field. And we call these the train tracks. Okay, so if the ball's here, okay, the other part, the train tracks for the opposite side would probably be somewhere over here. And again, this isn't really to scale. Why? Because I don't have a lot of space. But somewhere over here beyond the train tracks, you're going to see the numbers on the field. Okay. That's like the 10, the 15, the 20, and so on and so forth. Okay. Over here, you'll have numbers as well. And then obviously you'll have from the numbers, the bottom of the numbers to the sideline. By the way, I'll talk about that too, so people understand this. I'm going to try my best here. It's kind of hard to draw, but let's say you have this. Okay, that's a 20. So basically what you're looking at is this is called the top of the numbers. If we say a line on the top of the numbers, that's on top. If we say you're going to the bottom of the numbers or a line on the bottom of the numbers, then that would put you there. If your alignment is on the numbers, or I usually say in the numbers, okay, then you'd be inside here somewhere. Okay, so that's why those fancy things are there on the field, not only because they look pretty and you can tell what yard line we're on and so on and so forth, but it has to do also with spatial awareness for alignment, especially if you're playing on the perimeter as a receiver. So that's the numbers. Again, top, in, bottom, ball on the right hash. We're now going to talk. This is the boundary. Okay, so the boundary is the short side of the field, okay, where there isn't a lot of space. So boundary equals short side. Okay, so now all the space is over here. Okay, so the ball's here. We got all this space over here. All right, so that's the field. So this side is the boundary because where the ball is. And then this side would be the field. where all the green grass is. So lots of green grass. Okay. Lots of space. Right. Again, the football field is 53.3 wide. All right. And if you're playing defense, trying to cover 53 1/3 is pretty difficult. Okay. So again, that's from sideline to sideline, 53 1/3 yards. Obviously, you know, the end zones are 10 yards deep. And so the playing field is 100 yards, but then 10 yards deep if you account for the end zones, so that's another 20 yards. But at any rate, it's 53 1/3 wide. Ball here is the boundary, the short side. The field is where all the space is, all right, which is from here over. The high school field is pretty cool, similar to the college field. But the high school field is really nice because it's cut into thirds. Okay. So it's got pretty equidistant parts that we have divided up into three thirds. Okay. So, but at any rate, this is basically what it looks like if the ball was here. Now, if the ball was over on the opposite side, I'm going to clear this. Okay. If the ball was on the opposite, again, just so we know, 80% plus of the game are played on hashes. Okay. It's very rare that the ball's in the middle of the field. Okay. Rare. All right. It's played on the hashes. So you definitely need to understand spatial awareness when you're aligning for success. So again, 80% on the hashes. So if the ball was, and again, this isn't drawn to scale, but if the ball's on the left hash, okay, your numbers are over here somewhere. Again, I'm putting them tight because I don't have a lot of space. But now the opposite hash is over here. And then obviously you'd have your numbers here. And then your sideline is going to be over here. Same thing, the sideline would be over here. Okay, somewhere sideline. That's all for sideline. Okay, so ball on the left hash. All right. This would be the boundary because it's the short side of the field. I'm just going to put BOUND for boundary, drawing that way, the arrow that way. And then obviously that's the field because from here over, we have all of this space. Okay, where that ball is, we have all this space that has to be defended. Okay, so field. All right, is where we have a lot of space. Okay, so that's the difference between the boundary and the field. And so what I'm going to do now real quick is get rid of this. I'm going to take a moment to give you an example of when we put the formation into the boundary. Get rid of that. Okay, so just so that everybody understands this, and we went over this kind of today at practice, but this thing it's acting up on me. Okay. So if you look at our offense, to give you an example of a formation, we're going to be very simple, and we're going to say purple left. Okay. Take one formation. All right. The direction, a lot of times it dictates where the Y and the F are going to go. So normally the Y and the F go to the direction. Okay. The X, because these guys are tethered, the X and the Z in our offense, they're also tethered. But a lot of times they go away from direction or opposite the direction. Okay. All right, great. So let's get rid of that real quick. And now let's go with, if we look at purple right, just to give you one formation. Okay. Or I'm sorry, purple left. That's what I put up there. Purple left. Okay. All right, we just got done talking about field and boundary. Okay, so let's say the ball is on the left hash. Okay, so we'll go like this. Ball on left hash. Okay. Purple left is going to put, I'm going to put the center here. And again, this isn't drawn to scale, but because it's kind of hard, but guard tackle. Our Y is there. F. Okay. Off the line because you have a tight end there. All right. The boundary is this way. Why? Because this is the short side of the field where the ball is spotted. Okay. So we got YF. We're into the boundary. Okay. So obviously the field is over here. Okay. Opposite hash will be over here somewhere. Okay. There'll be numbers over here. Numbers over here. Sideline over here somewhere. Okay. All right. So now what that does to our X and Z. All right. If the ball's on the left hash, I would say, depending upon what your job is, rule of thumb, we were putting you either in the numbers or on the top of the numbers. Okay. Rule of thumb for the Z would be to split the difference between the end man on the line of scrimmage and number one. So that would put the Z roughly in between the X and the right tackle. Okay. Which puts him here. Okay. This would be something called a like -2 or -3, but again, it's not really drawn to scale. But what I mean by -2 or -3 is you are moving in toward the tackle and you're cutting your split down away from the hash. So it'd be like -2 from the hash. If we said +2 from the hash, you would move away from the hash 2 yards outside the hash. Okay. But general rule of thumb, if the ball's on the left hash and we're into the boundary, we probably want the X, depending upon what you're doing, either in the numbers or on the top of the numbers. Z is splitting the difference between the end man in the line of scrimmage and the number one receiver, whether that's -2, just inside the hash, so 2 yards inside the hash, whatever that may be, based on what your job. All right. So we align for success. So, if we have an in-breaking route, maybe we want to move out a smidge. Okay. If we have an out-breaking route, maybe we want to adjust in a smidge. If we're running the RPO with the outlaw, and we want to really try to remove this overhang defender or apex defender, maybe we want to move out just a little bit so it widens him and he can't get nosy in the run game. There's rhymes and reasons to why we do or align the way that we do. But general rule of thumb, all right, if we're into the boundary and talking about the F receiver in a moment, we want to just make sure that we have our spatial awareness is there and that we align properly. So again, take the X either in the numbers or on the top of the numbers, Z plus or minus 2 with regard to the hash, splitting the difference between the end man line of scrimmage and the number 1 receiver. Again, this is to the field. This is the boundary. Tight end is in line in a 3-point stance. And basically the F, based on what he's asked to do, he could be anywhere between splitting the difference between the sideline and the top of the numbers. He could be bottom of the numbers. He could be in the numbers. He could be, it all depends on what his job is. If he's running a speed out, obviously, he'd probably want to be a little bit closer so he has space. He might line up in the numbers, all right, so that he can, if he's in the numbers, so he can run that speed out toward the sideline and have an opportunity to catch the ball and potentially gain yards after the catch. So again, aligned for success. So again, this tutorial is discussing how to understand the difference between the boundary and the field. Gives you an example of a formation, one that's into the boundary, and then where we align based on, the X and the Z being tethered together, the Y and the F most of the time being tethered together. And then, where we align, how we rule of thumb, in between the Z is going to be halfway between or midpointing the X and the end man line of scrimmage. And then the other thing too is just to show you, if we did the opposite and we said purple left, just so you can understand when we put the formation, we could put the X and the Z into the boundary. But if the ball, and we said the same thing, if we said purple left, okay, all right, we said purple left. Okay. Let's say the ball was here now on the right hash. Okay. And we said purple left. Okay. So basically what we're doing now is we're saying center, guard, guard, tackle, tackle. Okay. The tight end and the F are going to the field because look where all the space is. So purple left, ball on the right hash, Y and Z tethered together. Okay, here's the field. Okay, field that way. I'm going to put a B for boundary this way. Okay, now we got numbers. Okay, numbers over here, numbers. Okay, we're now putting the X, and depending upon what he's got to do, we'll be on the line. And we're putting the Z off the line in between. Depending upon what they have to do, we're putting the X and the Z into the boundary of the short side of the field. We're putting the Y and the F to the field. So we have the ability now, based on how the formation and where the ball is, based on the formation, 9 times out of 10 last year, we were actually a lot of times we're putting the X and the Z always always, always, always over to this side, to the field, we now have the ability to put the tight end and the flanker, or the F, to the field, with the X and the Z being put to the short side of the field or the boundary. So teams can't take advantage of knowing that we run the RPO away from the boundary, or we run the RPO always to the field. We can now run the RPO into the boundary, and it doesn't matter. They have to be able to game plan for those kind of things. So, but that's one example of one formation, talking about field, boundary, the difference between the two. Again, talking about how we call the offense formationally, where the Y and the F are tethered, X and Z are tethered. And again, putting the formation to the field. So if the ball's in the left hash, purple left would put the tight end and the flanker into the boundary with the X and the Z to the field. If we're on the right hash, it now puts the X and the Z into the boundary, with the Y and the F being placed to the side of the field, or the field side where all the space is. So guys, again, a short tutorial. I hope you guys enjoyed this, got something out of it. And if you have any questions, obviously you can drop them in Google Classroom chat area so that I can answer them accordingly. And again, I'm going to say I hope this is helpful, and we'll see you next time. This is Coach C. Peace. Peace out.